Intelligence heads clammed up today about their discussions with President Trump. But tomorrow, James Comey, he will step up before Congress. All signs, they're pointing to the former FBI head speaking about what went down with Russia and his firing. Our panel of attorneys is here to weigh in. Then President Trump reportedly having trouble getting a top D.C. lawyer and law firm to represent him in the Russia probe. We're going to tell you why we're hearing the reasons they're turning down one of the most prestigious cases imaginable. Also, meet the man who's helping people who can't help themselves stay out of jail simply because they can't afford bail. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French, a busy hour ahead. Did the President of the United States obstruct justice to try and protect his former National Security Advisor, Michael Flynn, and potentially to protect himself and his presidency? Well, that is the question being asked tonight in Washington as well as across the country. Now, the next chapter in that story, it comes in just 16 hours. That is, the fired FBI Director James Comey will testify before the Senate Intelligence Committee. Comey, we do know, will not say if Trump did or did not obstruct justice, but he will drop a couple of breadcrumbs for the committee members to thus follow. Now, those questions were also being asked by the Intelligence Committee today, but the lack of answers made for a little bit of news this afternoon. That until we get our first look at what Director Comey will say in person tomorrow morning. For more on both major developments, let's bring in our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman.
A lot to get through, Rich, and let's begin with today's testimony before the Senate Intelligence Committee, testimony that seemed to produce more frustration and tension than answers. Most of the top intel chiefs in the government were there, including the Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coats, the head of the NSA, Mike Rogers, that man, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who's the person overseeing the special counsel into Russia, and acting FBI Director Andrew McCabe. The quartet all testified they never felt pressured by the president, but would not say if the president asked them to downplay the investigations, as was reported by the Washington Post. But that only covers what the group felt when they were talking with the president, not what the president said, which could be open to interpretation. So the group was asked by both Republican and Democratic senators to relay what either President Trump or former FBI Director Comey told them, and they continually refused to do so, leading to contentious exchanges like this one between Maine Senator Angus King and the Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coats.
I'm not satisfied with I do not believe it is appropriate or I do not feel I should answer. I want to understand a legal basis. You swore that oath to tell us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and today you are refusing to do so. What is the legal basis for your refusal to testify to this committee?
I'm not sure I have a legal basis.
I'm not sure I have a legal basis. It did not end there. The hearing did end with Ranking Democrat Mark Warner laying into Deputy AG Rod Rosenstein and the rest of the witnesses.
Our default position is that when there's a Justice Department investigation, we do not discuss it publicly. That's our default rule, so nobody needs to.
Is that the rule for the President of the United States as well?
I don't know what.
Because that is what the questions are being asked about. Reports that nobody has laid the rest here, that the President of the United States has intervened directly in an ongoing FBI investigation, and we've gotten no answer from any of you. And frankly, we've at least heard from Director Coats and Admiral Rogers that they've not been asked to recuse an answer because of Director Mueller, and I don't understand why we can't get that answer.
That was today. Tomorrow, of course, James Comey will be in front of that same Senate Intelligence Committee. And today, reportedly at Comey's behest, the committee released Comey's prepared opening remarks that he will give at the start of his testimony tomorrow. In the 7-page document, Comey does seem to confirm that he told President Trump on 3 separate occasions that Trump was not personally a target of his investigation. Trump has repeated that claim countless times, including in the letter in which he fired Comey. The notes recount 4 different conversations that Comey had with Trump, the first of which happened on January 27th. That's one day after Acting Attorney General Sally Yates first went to the White House to warn the administration that Michael Flynn was at risk of being blackmailed by the Russians after lying about his contacts with the Russian ambassador during the campaign and the transition. The next day, January 27th, Trump invites Comey to a dinner that Comey did not realize would be private. Following the dinner, Comey says, quote, "The president began by asking me whether I wanted to stay on as FBI director, which I found strange because he had already told me twice earlier that he hoped I would stay, and I had assured him that I intended to. A few minutes later, the president said, quote, 'I need loyalty. I expect loyalty.' Comey continues, I didn't move, speak, or change my facial expression in any way during the awkward silence that followed. We simply looked at each other in silence. Comey continues, President Trump then said later in the dinner, quote, I need loyalty. I, Comey replied, you will always get honesty from me. He, the president, paused and then said, that's what I want, honest loyalty. I, Comey, paused, then said, quote, you will get that from me. Noting it is possible we understood the phrase honest loyalty differently, but I decided it wouldn't be productive to push it further. Flash forward to February 13th. That is the day that Trump fired Michael Flynn for lying to Mike Pence about his meetings with the Russian ambassador. The next day, Sessions, Comey, and others were in the Oval Office with the president. Trump asked everyone to leave the room but Comey. Comey took notes of the meeting after it ended. Comey says Trump began talking about Flynn, saying, quote, he is a good guy and has been through a lot. He then said, I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go, to letting Flynn go. He is a good guy. I hope you can let this go. Comey says, I replied only that he is a good guy. I did not say I would let this go. Comey continued, quote, I had understood the president to be requesting that we drop any investigation of Flynn in connection with false statements and about his conversations with the Russian ambassador in December. I did not understand the president to be talking about the broader investigation into Russia or possible links to his campaign. On March 30th, Trump called Comey at his office at the FBI. 3 weeks earlier, Trump had accused President Obama of wiretapping him during the transition at Trump Tower. 10 days before that phone call, testifying before Congress, Comey said there was no evidence of any wiretapping of Trump. At that same hearing, Comey confirmed that the FBI was investigating links between Russia and the Trump campaign. And on the morning of the phone call, March 30th, the Wall Street Journal had reported that Flynn was seeking immunity in exchange for any testimony he would give. That was in the morning, and then Comey's phone rang. In his notes after the call, Comey recalls that, quote, President Trump described the Russia investigation as a cloud that was impairing his ability to act on behalf of the country. He said he had nothing to do with Russia. He had not been involved with hookers in Russia, and he always assumed he was being recorded when in Russia. And that, he asked what I could do to lift the cloud. As for the rest of what we can expect from Comey's testimony, well, Rich, as they say on all the best soap operas, tune in tomorrow.
All right, I want to bring in our legal panel right now. A lot to digest. Andrew, thank you very much. We're joined by adjunct professor at the Elizabeth Howe School of Law at Pace University, Mark Furnish. He's argued before the U.S. Supreme Court. Mayo Bartlett, an attorney at the law offices of Mayo Bartlett PLLC and a former chief of the Bias Crimes Unit at the Westchester County DA's office. And Jim Casor is a criminal defense attorney in Manhattan. He sits on the board of directors of the New York City Criminal Bar Association. He also frequently lectures at both New York Law School and the Bar Association's Queens in New York City. Okay, first, on the point, those guys today, Coates, Rogers, McCabe, they couldn't provide a scintilla of legal rationale. And you had Republican and Democratic senators, I think, rightfully outraged that they went there and that body is charged with conducting investigations and inquiries and asking questions, and they couldn't even give a legal answer why they couldn't answer some of the most basic questions. This didn't have to, if you're right, left, conservative, liberal, had nothing to do with anything. The fact that they got up there and did that, I found, if not shameful, was just a colossal not only waste of time, but who are they to decide legal rights and wrongs as to what they can and can't do? We have, you know, you swear an oath, you're supposed to share the information that won't compromise national security. They wouldn't answer a basic question.
Without even addressing the question of whether they were right or wrong to do so, the fact that they appeared before the committees without first telling them that that was their intention, to me made it look very staged. It really did.
That is, all of this is completely wrong, and here's why. That wasn't the purpose of today's hearing. This was about the reauthorization of Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. That was the express purpose of today's hearing.
Mark,
they weren't, so wait a minute.
Wait, you under the pretense that those three gentlemen didn't assume they were going to be asked questions?
They were not called there for that purpose today, and in the press repeatedly in the days leading up to this, there were warnings issued by those people and their emissaries saying if politicians on either side, right or left, tried to sabotage this particular debate about the reauthorization of a critical national security statute, they wouldn't get sidetracked. Now, they can subpoena these people and bring them back in to testify about that, but let's just be fair.
It was not a good look today, Mark, and put it this way.
That was not the purpose of today's hearing. The purpose of tomorrow's hearing, which we already know the substance of, is to address these things.
Okay. first off, why Mayo would Comey have put out the letter that he did today, or at least the memo laying out? And I've heard a couple different theories. I'm curious from yourself.
Yeah, you know, I don't really know why you would do that. I guess basically you're sending it out there to show that this is presumably not something that's a recent fabrication, that you've had this in existence. You're not just tailoring your testimony to the questions that are being asked. But at the same time, you're locking yourself in, and you're going based upon your recollection. So unless you took contemporaneous notes and you wrote everything down in real time,
Which he did. He says he did that in the statement.
Right. He says he did that. He says he hasn't done that with the previous administration as well. So if that's the case, then presumably you're just being upfront and giving them all the information.
And the arguments I've heard are two basic ones. One is, so tomorrow we don't have some of those ridiculous hearings where people are going to be asking about subjects that have nothing to do with the conversation. It's going to be focused on the Russia probe. This at least doesn't guarantee that'll happen, but it'll make it quite embarrassing, frankly, with the details that were laid out in the memo today if they don't keep the questions on that. And the other one is, a lot of this, in my world of politics, not law, which we'll talk about, is expectations. He's laying out what's out there right now, and today they're going to talk about it.
Is it unusual for them to release in advance their preliminary remarks? I don't think that's unusual.
It's not, but he announces he wanted to do this himself. This wasn't requested in any way, but this was a decision by Comey.
I suspect it's because little tidbits have been leaking out and dripping out in the days leading up to this. Now you have the whole statement in context, 7 pages. It's not long. People can read it. There's no spinning it.
Mark's
their own
point,
conclusions.
He's not afraid to let people prepare on both sides for questions.
But to Mark's point also, with respect to the previous people that were testifying, you know, look, yes, there is a hearing, and a hearing should be limited to the subject matter. However, you do benefit if you get other things out of the way. You prevent yourself from having to come back over and over again to answer questions.
The FISA business is important for our national security for both parties. It's not really a political issue. They said there was no pressure on them to change, to interfere with any investigation,
Yes,
and they
yes and
declined
no,
to get
yes
into
and no.
it.
They wouldn't.
Why not answer the other question?
And that's the
Because
point, Mark.
once
Guys,
we
I
start
got to
getting
keep this.
into
Let me
the
keep this on the
details
rails
of it,
because I
we're
want to
not
get
gonna
into
debate
Comey
FISA.
tomorrow. Frankly, once tomorrow happens, no one's going to remember today.
Correct,
But you're right.
correct.
It was selective what they chose that they could talk about, what they couldn't, and what they left unsaid
Once
is the
you
big story.
start
Wait a
getting
second. All
into
right,
the
Mark,
details,
I got
FISA
limited
goes
time.
away.
Yeah, can't do this tonight. Okay. The things that came out of Comey's letter and the focus, overwhelmingly the focus has been, Jimmy, so far. On one channel, I'll say, they said, hey, Comey said Trump wasn't investigated, okay? In every other channel in my world and every other person I've said, it is the culmination, not a single thing, but the picture that's painted. And I don't want to get into obstruction of justice tonight because I think that is premature. There's an investigation that Mueller's doing. But the TikTok that Andrew laid off at the top of the program, which really began with the different conversations, the clearing people out of rooms, the point about asking somebody if they want to keep their job after assurances that Comey says in the letter he'd already said he did, and I already told him I was in year 3 of a 10-year term that I plan to serve, then the demands of loyalty and the expectations of loyalty, and then moreover going into some of the details about where he took it away clearly to say, you know, I want a quid pro quo here from you. That's what's expected to be heard tomorrow, Jimmy. So to me,
about a quid pro quo.
let me try it again, Jimmy.
But it's
tomorrow,
not true. It's not what he said.
But Mark, you got to do what we learned in school. Wait until you're called.
It's not there.
Okay. The point is tomorrow, from an optics standpoint, okay? Because the criminal investigation's Mueller, okay? Tomorrow's the optics. What are you going to look most closely at?
I'm going to look most closely at how this man testifies and whether or not I can believe and accept his perception of what was being said to him. You know, it just sounds to me, based on what I've read, is that he was invited there and asked the one question: are you with me? Are you with me entirely? Do I have your loyalty? Can I ask you to do this? Can I ask you to do that? Well,
that was my reading of it completely.
He said,
Mark,
I want your loyalty. That's
Mark,
what he said.
Yeah, but Mark,
Look, the beautiful thing is we don't have to spin this. There's 7 pages of testimony, word for word, very carefully worded testimony. People should read the entire testimony.
Yeah, but Mark, you know as well as I do. You know as well as I do.
I don't. I read it.
But you don't
have
hear what I
don't have a
said,
dog
so
in it.
maybe you do. My point is, we read things all the time. All I'm saying is, I want to look at him. I want to listen to him,
He is
because from an
100%
optics
credible, and every
standpoint,
word that came out of his mouth was true.
And if you
There's no
wanted
question about
loyalty,
it.
what if
and if
he
you
says-
wanted loyalty, and by the way, you moved on something that was against the president's interest, and then you were fired for it, it sure smells like something
no, it
here,
doesn't,
Mayo,
because-
that ain't pretty.
I think that when you have to choose your words very carefully, and to Mark's point, none of this stuff really should be partisan at all. It's not about politics. This is a duty that all these people owe to the American people. We have to be able to trust the government. If you can't believe that your government officials are telling the truth and that they're not cutting backdoor deals, then it's a problem. And if President Trump is innocent, and if everything that Mark says is true, the best thing we can possibly do is shine sunlight on it, let
Best
everybody get an
disinfectant.
opportunity to see what's
I
going on.
got real
Every
quick.
word that
Why
he
would
said
you
is
ask
true.
the AG to leave the room?
He asked, look.
No, why do just answer that and only that?
He wanted
Why
that-
would you
I
clear
don't
out of
have
the
to answer
room?
it. He said it in front of 6 other people, every higher member of government. There
did
was
you
nothing
read the
to-
document? He
Yes, I
cleared
did.
everybody
He said-
out of the
he
room to
said there
say,
was
"Do you pledge me your
excuse
loyalty?"
He said there was a semicircle of 6 people sitting around the desk in front of every one of those people. He said, "Please leave the room. I want to talk to Mr. Comey in private."
For a
He said
pledge
it-
of loyalty.
Listen, he didn't ask for a pledge of loyalty. He said, "I want your loyalty." It's clear
I don't
from
think
reading.
there's a
Let me just
distinction or
finish
a
this.
difference there.
When you read this, it will be clear to any rational reader.
Oh, I read it.
That what he wanted.
And I will tell you, most
he
rational
wanted-
people have a different
let me-
take from
let
it
me
than
just-
yourself.
Let me just finish.
Really quickly, though.
What he wanted from Comey was him to make public that he was not at the time under investigation. Over a period of 3 or 4 months, he asked Comey to do that.
We
3 or
only know
4
from this document one time.
3 or 4 times, Comey demurred each time, as was his right.
No.
And
That's
Trump
not what this
fired
says.
him for it. Read
No,
it.
no.
Read it.
No,
Let the
we all
public-
read it. He didn't say 3 times in the
3
document
separate
today.
times, as recently
Okay.
as the end
Coming
of
up
March
next.
and then in early
President Trump obviously wants to lawyer up. But the question is, top D.C. attorneys are saying no. Now, we're going to explain why, at least off the record, these folks are saying they want to be left out completely of the Russia case.